Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today's session. It is just after 2. I apologize for the delay. We were just having some technical issues, but we will get started now. So my name is Kimberly Burnell. I'm the Ontario Patient Support Liaison at AMAC, the Aplastic Anemia and Myelodysplasia Association of Canada. If you don't know who we are, we're a leading funder of research in bone marrow failure diseases in Canada. We support patients and caregivers from across the country who are living with AA, MDS, and PNH. Today, I'm really pleased to be joined by Culinary Dietitian Shauna Lindzon. Shauna brings over 27 years of nutrition experience. She's worked as a clinical dietitian at Sunnybrook Health Science Centre in nephrology and neurosurgery. And most recently, she is a program developer and nutrition leader at Wellspring Cancer Support Network in Toronto. Today, Shauna will be joining us live from her kitchen, which is so different from watching PowerPoint slides, which is great. And we'll demonstrate how we can use food in our everyday lives to sort of give us energy and support our bodies through treatment and recovery. If you have any questions at all through the presentation, please feel free to type them into the question or chat box. Or if you wanted to open your mic and actually have a chat with Shauna or ask a question yourself, just type that into the question box that you want your mic unmuted. I can do that for you at any time, and you can live chat with Shauna as well. Just to note that this webinar will be recorded and you can watch it back on our website at any time. So without further ado, Shauna, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. And I'm really happy that you asked me to do this, because in this day and age, we're all at home and we're socially isolating. And this is a fantastic session to bring everyone to on a Saturday. So what I'm going to do today is, as Kimberly mentioned, we're going to be doing a nutrition demo instead of a PowerPoint presentation. And as I always say, I'm here for you, not for me. So I'm just so excited to answer all of your questions. And don't be shy, because we have a whole hour together. So you can type in any questions nutrition related, or you can, as she said, unmute yourself and ask questions. And I like to answer questions as we go, because people, if they have a question, want it answered right away. You don't want to wait till the end. Okay, so the goal of my discussion today is to talk about how to energize yourself during your treatments, or if you have any nutrition related issues, like you're not feeling so well and you need to boost your energy, if your treatment's giving you side effects, how can you maximize your nutrition? So today we're going to do 2 very simple recipes, and I chose these recipes so I can actually break down the ingredients and teach you what to look for when you're looking for healthy foods and healthy snacking choices. So any questions to start? If not, if we don't have any in the chat, I'm going to get started with our ginger pear smoothie. So the first recipe that I've chosen has whole fruit in it. So here I have my pear. When I'm adding a pear or an apple or anything that's fresh, I always keep the skin on. And I just run the pear under water, and I use my hands as friction to clean it. So anything that any bacteria or any dirt gets rubbed off. You don't necessarily have to do anything else but friction. That's what the research shows in terms of getting rid of any dirt on the fresh fruit. So I'm about to chop these up, but before I do that, I want to talk about my ginger here. So isn't that a pretty ginger root? So when you're looking for ginger, there are typically 2 types of ginger in the grocery stores. There's one that's really kind of big bulbs, and then there's one that has smaller kind of claws. This one happens to be the one that's smaller. And what you want to do is do the snap test, and you can actually hear that. So you can see that it's really moist inside, which means it's fresh. Now, why am I going to highlight ginger? Because there are a lot of studies out there that show ginger as having really healthy there's something called 6-gingerol in ginger, and it's a really healthy component that could be antibacterial, antiviral, that type of thing. So it can support your immune system. So what you want to do is you want to buy ginger fresh, and there's 3 ways that you can store ginger to keep it fresh. So the first way is to put it into the fridge. The second way is you can just keep it at room temperature, and the third way is to freeze it. So if you freeze it, it's actually easier to peel. So what I do is I'm just going to give this a quick and to make sure it's really clean. And I'm going to take a paper towel and I'm just going to dry it. Now to peel the ginger, I sometimes actually, if I'm putting it in a smoothie, eat the peel, because peel equals fiber, and fiber is good for our digestive system. And the reason why fiber is good for our digestive system is because it helps our good bacteria. Our gut bacteria feed on the fiber in our intestine, and that's good to keep our good bacteria going, not the bad bacteria. So the more fiber in your diet, the better. So what I do is I take the ginger and I just take a spoon to it. See that? And I just peel it. And that means that we're not wasting a lot of the ginger. If I took a knife to it, I would be cutting off like a lot of the ginger and wasting it. So I'm actually just going to peel this out. And I think Kimberly sent the recipes to you, and you've got the recipe. So if you're following along and you look at the recipe, we want to put a tablespoon of the ginger. So I don't really measure it. I just cut off a large chunk of it. Just going to continue to peel it. The other thing you can do is you can use a grater, like a microplane, and you can grate the ginger down. I'll often keep the ginger in my freezer sliced. So if I'm using it like in a curry or a warm application, I'll have the pre-sliced ginger and I just pop it into my dish. All right, so a really good tip with ginger is to make sure that if you're putting it into a blender, cut it up first. Because if you put it in a whole chunk, what's going to happen is it's going to start getting caught in the blade. So I always cut it up a little bit and then throw it in. Okay, so we've got the ginger. Next, we're going to take the pears. So with the pears, what I like to do is I like to buy them a few days in advance and have them ripe. And the reason being is then they'll taste sweeter, and then I'll need less sweetener to add to the smoothie. So I'm just going to put in 2 pears into the smoothie. And the reason also why we're making a smoothie is because if you're not feeling so great and you're really tired, it gives you a boost of nutrition and a boost of vitamins and minerals quickly, and it doesn't take a lot of prep. Okay, so I've got 2 pears in here, and sometimes if you want, I have a high power blender, which is the Vitamix. If you have a high power blender, you could even keep the seeds in. I don't love putting apple seeds in just because there's like a trace amount of cyanide in the apple seed, but I don't think pear seeds have that. Okay, so I've got in here the ginger, the fresh pear with the peel, and then if you look at your recipe, the next thing I'm going to add is some protein. So in order to keep your energy up, you want to have a mix of protein, carbohydrate, and fat. So in here, we already have our carbohydrate, which is our pear, that also has our fiber. We have our ginger, which is the anti-inflammatory. And now these are hemp seeds. So check that out. They're little seeds. They're also called hemp hearts. And they're made in Manitoba. And I always say just like me, because I'm from Winnipeg. So here you can see here, I'm just going to show you hemp hearts, 10 grams of protein per, I'm just going to check, I think that's per, yes, 3 tablespoons, and that's exactly what we're putting into the smoothie. We're going to have 10 grams of protein. So this is more than an egg in our smoothie. And then it also has, I'm just looking, it has some fiber, and it's got some healthy fats in here. So the hemp seeds are going in. Okay, next, what I want to add in is this. So this is a nut butter. This is almond butter. This one I pick up at Costco, and it's a really nice one because I think they roast the almonds first. So it's really nutty. And I'm going to put about 2 tablespoons of the natural nut butter in here. And that also provides us with some protein and some fat, which gives us the staying power that we want, that gives us our energy. So there you go. And so the almond butter is in there. And now I have to decide, am I going to put a sweetener like maple syrup, or is my pear sweet enough? The other thing I have to decide is, what liquid am I going to put in? So this is soy milk. And I actually would like to get into talking about soy a little, because people always wonder, is soy healthy? Is soy unhealthy? Well, the answer to that is to choose natural whole soy, meaning soy that hasn't been processed down. So if I read the ingredients in this soy milk, it indicates that there are whole organic soybeans in here. So they didn't use something called soy isolate protein, which means that they've manipulated it and they've processed it. So this is still kind of processed, right? Because it's the soybeans, the protein's extracted out, but it is a healthy protein, and it acts as a phytoestrogen in your body. Now, what does that mean? That means it's a plant chemical, phytoestrogen, so plant means phyto, and it acts like estrogen in your body, but it's not estrogen. So studies show the more phytoestrogens you eat, which are plant sources of estrogen from the soy, if you have a receptor site, for instance, some cancer cells have a receptor site waiting for the estrogen to block into it, the phytoestrogen gets there first. So it is a good thing to eat whole soy. It's beneficial for us. And other examples of whole soy would be tofu, edamame beans, like the immature soybeans, tempeh, miso, that's all whole soy. Examples of processed soy would be the protein bars or protein powder, or sometimes soy isolate proteins put into wieners or chicken fingers, that type of thing. So you want to try to avoid the super processed soy because it doesn't have a lot in it. The whole soy has a lot more to offer. Now, the other thing I'm going to look for on my soy milk is how much sugar's in this. So this one says vanilla, and I actually bought this to make cupcakes for my daughter a week or 2 ago. So I have this one in my fridge, and this one happens to be sweetened. So if I add this one to the smoothie, I don't think I need any maple syrup. But if I add unsweetened milk, like this almond milk, for instance, so this is natural, unsweetened, absolutely no sugar added, I would have to have a little maple syrup. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my measuring cup, and I'm going to add, the recipe says about 1.5 cups of the milk. So you can use whatever you want. So as I said, I've got this soy milk left over, and ta-da, it's exactly 1.5 cups. So I just finished it. I'm going to put that into my smoothie here. And now I'm ready to blend it. All right, so I don't have my earpods on, so it's going to cause a little bit of noise, but that's okay. I want you to see it rock and roll. So here we go. So you want to blend it long enough that you get the ginger really blended up. If you don't have a high motor in your blender, you can grate the ginger in and it will be fine. Even not such a high power blender, let's say if you have, just a lower wattage one, it should blend up the ginger. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just taste this and see if I need some maple syrup. And sorry, I can't pass it through the screen for you guys to taste it too. But look how rich and beautiful that is. So it's really nice. So I just got some of my honey. Better get that out. Oh, that's delicious. And I find this kind of ginger, the one that is the thinner one, is stronger. So you've got to be careful that you don't get it too spicy. But if you're having any nausea, ginger is a really good thing to add to your diet. I'm just going to get some of that out of my honey there because it's just sitting on top before it sinks in. Okay, so that's the ginger pear smoothie. I'm just going to pause now and see if we have any questions. Nope, no questions. Okay, so to reiterate, you want to make sure when you're choosing a snack to have something that's really healthy, like the ginger, a whole fruit. So I'm not going to put juice into a smoothie. That's kind of defeating the purpose because you want to get that fiber. And when I have the skin on, as well as the fruit part, that's a lot of fiber. The hemp seeds, the nut butter, which gives you the protein as well. When you're storing these foods, the nut butter you want to store upside down because we want to buy the natural one that doesn't have the stabilizers in it, like the sugar and the palm oil. So some nut butters on the market will have those stabilizers. And if you store it down like this, the oil doesn't separate as much. So it's a really good tip. The other thing is try to look for a make that has roasted nuts. And the reason being is if you're immunocompromised, you don't want to eat a lot of raw foods. And actually, I did read there's something on the AAMAC website that indicates that you shouldn't have a lot of raw nuts or raw sprouts, which is true. Okay, so that's this smoothie, and if you have any questions about different things to add into it, I can answer that. But I also do want to say something like hemp seeds should be kept in the fridge or the freezer. Okay, so moving on, I'm just going to open
Shauna,
up my workspace. Yeah,
sorry, there is
do
a
you have a
question
question?
about the smoothie. Does it keep if you can't sort of drink it all in one shot? I know I struggle with that. I make a big smoothie and I can't quite get through it all. Does it keep well in the fridge?
Good question. Yeah, good question. So it actually does, it gets a little thicker. So the hemp seeds will thicken it up. But if you end up putting something like flax seeds or ground flax seeds into a smoothie and you put it into the fridge, it's going to thicken and kind of congeal. My trick, if I don't drink the whole thing, which I'm going to end up doing today because I made the whole batch, which gives me 4 smoothies, is I put it in my fridge on the top shelf, or if you can't fit it, put it on the side shelf in the blender. Because then you put the lid on, and when you're going to have it again, like let's say you make 2 servings, you can actually put it back on the blender and whirl it again. If it ends up getting too thick, you can add just a little bit of the liquid milk to loosen it up a little bit. So yes, you can put it in the fridge. And the other thing is, as I said, if you do put something that's a thickening agent, like the ground flaxseed, you could put it in the fridge and then eat it like a pudding, like eat it with a spoon the next day. Okay, any more questions?
No, that's it for now. Thanks.
Okay, yeah, so smoothies are a great thing to do in bulk and put them in the fridge. This one does keep well. I've made this one many times before. And the other really cool thing about this, which I forgot to mention, is if you want to drink this smoothie warm, you can, if you have a high power blender, you turn up the blender and you keep it going. And it's almost like when you're making a soup in a blender. If it's a high power blender, the motor will heat it up. And this is a warm ginger pear smoothie, which is really soothing if you're not feeling so well, because the ginger gets spicy and it helps soothe your stomach. And so I will often serve this warm. And if you don't have a high power blender, you can also put it in a little pot and just pour it in and stir it on a low heat and warm it up. So I actually used to call this a warm ginger pear smoothie, but I'm giving you the option of doing both. Okay, so that's the smoothie. Any more questions about the smoothie? I didn't put the maple syrup in. I'm going to close the lid on my maple syrup. And yeah, okay, so now what we're going to do is I'm just going to get our energy ball recipe, and I'm going to get our flax seeds out there so you can see that. And I'm going to move our blender away and get everything ready. Okay, so here we go. So I don't know if you've made energy bites or you've heard about energy bites, but this is a no-bake way to get a super healthy snack in. Some people like to eat these for breakfast because they've got a lot of good stuff in them. So let's get started. So the first thing that we're going to put in are rolled oats. So these are called old-fashioned rolled oats. When you're buying oats, you want to buy them in the whole grain version. The whole grains keep you full, and they're also full of nutrients. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit now about whole grains. So I'm going to make half the recipe, so it makes about 20 balls instead of 40 to 45 balls, or else we'd be rolling all day. Okay, so speaking about rolling, these are called rolled oats. So you can see here that they're really large flake oats. So with the oats, there are different types of oats. There's steel cut oats, which are a whole oat that hasn't been rolled. Then there's rolled oats where they take the steel cut oat and they roll it out. So it's pretty thick. And when it's thick, I've got almond butter in here. When it's thick, what happens is your body takes longer to break it down, and you are fuller longer. So I'd rather you get steel cut oats or a whole old-fashioned rolled oats than instant oats. So those oats that you buy at the store that are in packets, usually they have like maple or some sort of fruit flavoring added to them, have a lot of sugar added into them, and they're processed. So you want to get the whole oats. The next tip for a recipe like this, if you're making an energy bite or if you're making homemade granola or you're making a crisp or something like that, to reduce the risk of bacterial contamination, you want to toast your oats. So in the recipe, I indicated that you can take a baking sheet, put the oats on it, and toast them at 350 degrees for about 10 minutes, and then let them cool. And that's gonna, it's gonna get rid of the bacteria, if there is bacteria in them. B, it's going to give it a better flavor because you'll get that toasty flavor, and it's going to elevate the taste of it. Okay, then what you have to do is you have to fully cool them, and we've got our oats here. So if you look at your recipe, the next thing we're going to put in are the ground flax seeds. So flax seeds are a whole seed, and they've got a hard outer coating to them. The reason why I make a lot of recipes with flaxseed is because they're super healthy in terms of they're high in fiber. They've got omega-3 fats, which are anti-inflammatory. So it really helps. It helps our immunity as well as our skin. It helps our heart. And the other thing it has is something called lignans, which is another plant substance. And this is protective of our breast and prostate glands. So you want to add the ground flaxseed into your diet and try to do, I usually say about 2 tablespoons a day. So studies show that 2 tablespoons is beneficial for heart health especially. The other tip here is if you buy them ground, like already ground, and you don't grind them yourself, like you can actually grind them in a coffee grinder grinds them well. You want to keep them in the fridge because they are volatile. The fats can disintegrate quickly, so you want to keep them in the fridge. So that's really important. So this energy bite that we're going to roll has the ground flax, and this is what it looks like. So it's almost a powder. And if any of you are going plant-based or trying to include more plant-based foods into your diet, ground flax is a really important thing to have in your house because you can actually make something called a flax egg. And This will bind foods, like you can make like a nut loaf or something and bind a loaf with, if you were typically using eggs, the flax egg will do the same thing. So isn't that cool? Okay, so here we go. The flaxseed goes in, so that's ground flax. And as I said, I'm going to be doing half the recipe. So if we take the hemp seeds, I've got, it says 2 tablespoons of hemp seed. So I'm just going to put 1 tablespoon of the hemp seed in. And this, again, gives you good fats, protein, and fiber. Okay, so that's about a tablespoon. Any questions, guys? How's it going?
Yeah, Shauna, there's a question about flaxseed. So there's regular flaxseed and there's golden flaxseed.
Yes.
What's the difference? I often have the same confusion because we're big flaxseed eaters in our house too.
So with the golden, it's actually just taste. I find the golden a little milder. Like it, sometimes flaxseed has a fishy taste to it because it's high in the omega-3s. So the golden is a little less fishy. So it's pretty well taste. The nutritional value is the same. So it's preference. I like to buy golden if I'm doing, if I'm putting whole flax seeds into a recipe. This one's cold milled, which means what they did is when they milled it at very low temperature. And it's so, which means that they're keeping the integrity of the fats. And I just got this at the grocery store in the health section. So, and the other thing I like about this is it's in a dark container. And if you buy, for instance, this make, the Bob's Red Mill make, what they do for flax is they keep it in a dark package. They don't keep it in a clear package, the milled one, because they want to make sure that you're keeping the integrity of the seed. Okay, any more questions with flax?
Just quickly, what about ground versus not ground flax?
Okay, so there are 2 completely different things. So the non-ground flax seed is just a seed, and it's, when you eat it, it's going to come out the way it went in. It's not going to, you're not going to get the nutritional benefits inside the flax, and you're going to poop it out like insoluble fiber, which there's nothing wrong with that if you're constipated, but you're not getting the health benefits of what's inside the seed. So I'd rather you either A, buy the whole seed and grind it yourself, because then you can ensure that it's done right then and there and it's really fresh, or B, buy it ground and store it properly.
Thank you.
Yeah, any more flax questions before we move on? Any questions about the hemp seed, or everyone's good with that? Or any questions about the whole grains, the different grains? So when we actually talk about whole grains, we're talking about a kernel. So there's whole grain oats, whole grain wheat, whole grain rice, and when you start taking off layers of it, you're taking off nutrition. So for instance, a wheat kernel has the germ in it, which is a small little percentage of the kernel. I think it's about 11 to 13% of the kernel. Then you have so that's, you've got the germ, you've got the bran, and then you've got the endosperm. The endosperm is the white stuff, and it takes up about 80% of the wheat kernel. So I'd rather you guys get whole wheat, so you're getting the germ, the bran, and the endosperm is energy. You're getting all of it. And each different section of your whole grains will have different nutrients. And you want to choose whole grains most often so you can get most of those nutrients. And don't forget about the fiber. So when you start stripping away the grain, you're also taking away the fiber. And fiber's what keeps you full. And if you're really tired, it's what gives you the energy. So you want to eat the high fiber. And it also keeps you regular. And if you're not feeling so well and you're not regular, it's kind of a double whammy, right? Like you want to make sure that your bowels are moving nicely. Okay, any questions about whole grains?
No, I think that's it.
Okay, perfect. So now we've got our whole grain oats, we've got our hemp seeds and our ground flax. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to season them. So I'm going to use a little bit of salt and a little bit of cinnamon. So For 20 bites, we're only using 1/4 teaspoon of salt, just because grains don't have a lot of flavor, right? So we're gonna offset the blandness with a little shot of salt and a shot of cinnamon. All right, then now to make them sticky, there's 2 things we have to do. So we're going to now take out our nut butter again. And you can also, if you've got like a peanut allergy or a nut allergy, you can use seed butter. So for instance, you can use pumpkin seed butter, which is super high in magnesium. And if I'm not sure if you get leg cramps, magnesium is super good in terms of if you're having leg cramps. So nuts and seeds are a good source of magnesium, as well as whole grains, lentils, beans, and magnesium's a really important mineral if you are having leg cramps. So it helps against that. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is the full recipe calls for a whole cup of this, because you've got to get this really sticky to roll it into the energy bite. So I'm just going to mix this up, and then I'm actually going to spoon about 1/2 cup of the nut butter. So here we go, you can see me doing that. It gets a little messy because it's really sticky. But the other huge tip is to keep this, and I wrote this in the recipe, keep this at room temperature. If it's at room temperature, not keep it at room temperature, sorry, keep it in the fridge, but when you're ready to make them, take out the amount you're gonna make and put it at room temperature, because it's much easier to incorporate the nut butter if it's at room temperature. Look how gorgeous that is. So this is the roasted almond butter. I actually make my own nut butter really quickly. Sometimes I'll buy it at Costco because nuts are expensive, right? Sometimes it's not that much cheaper to buy the nut butter. But what I do is I just put it in my high power blender, and I take the plunger and I just plunge it until it becomes really creamy and the oils are released. I don't add anything else. I don't add oil, I don't add sugar, I don't add anything else. Okay, so the nut butter's in, and the next thing we're gonna do is add the sweetness. Now in this type of thing, unfortunately, maple syrup does not work because it's not sticky enough. So I'm actually only going to put 2 tablespoons. So 1, 2 of the honey. So a full recipe, I would put 1/4 cup to 1/3 cup. If you like it super sweet, which I try to lower the amount of, I try to get my taste buds accustomed to not so sweet, because I'd rather have more of the protein and the fiber compared to the sweetness. Then you can put as much as 1/3 cup, but you want to put enough where it's going to stick together and you just get that little bit of sweetness. And this is a fantastic recipe to use instead of buying the commercial granola bars, which are convenient, but this is much healthier because you know what's going in and much less expensive. Okay, the next thing I'm going to add, because I'm going to give these to my daughter after, are chocolate chips. So just 2 tablespoons, I measured that out, of the chocolate chips. And with the chocolate chips, if you don't like chocolate or don't want chocolate, what you can also do is, I gave you a bunch of different options. You could put toasted coconut. I'm going to show you the one I buy here. So this one is the unsweetened coconut. You don't want to buy the one that has all the sugar in it. Doesn't matter what make it is, you just have to see the word unsweetened. And coconut is one of those ingredients where they do put a lot of sugar in it. And another really good tip is to toast up the coconut, because it gives you a really nice toasty flavor. The other thing you can add in are some Rice Krispies or something like that to give it kind of that crunch. I made these last week, and my daughter actually didn't love the Rice Krispies. I thought she would really love them. The other thing, I just took out some to show you guys, are pecans. So what you want to do is you just want to toast those up. As I mentioned, you don't want to eat them raw. You want to toast them up just in case something's looming on them. So what I do is I toast them one of 2 ways. I'll take a dry skillet and I'll just put the heat on, move it around, and it toasts it up and it releases the natural oils and it becomes really yummy. Or I put them in the oven or the little toaster oven, but you have to watch them really closely, because if they end up, they can burn really quickly and they're really expensive and they're kind of like, you know, a novelty. You don't want to waste them. And believe me, I've wasted, let's say, pine nuts, for instance, because they've burnt. So you have to keep a really close eye on them. Okay, so I'm just taking this, and since my nut butter was at room temperature, look at that. It's like coming together really easily. Okay, so now what you want to do is, what I normally do actually is wet my hands. And with this, when you wet your hands, it just comes together so easily and they don't stick. So I usually make them just a bit smaller than, let's say, a golf ball, about that size. And then you've got a no bake energy bite. And then what I do is I get just a plate and I put them on like that. And I just keep going till I get, as I said, the half recipe will give you about 20 bites and the full recipe will give you about 40 bites. And the way I store these is, if I keep a few at room temperature, they're good straight out of the fridge, or I put them in a large Ziploc bag or a container in the freezer. And they freeze for a long time, like 6 months, let's say. And I actually send my daughter to school with these, or she'll have them for breakfast because they've got the whole oats, and they're really healthy actually, with the hemp seeds and the ground flax seeds. And then one more thing also I'd like to put in here are dried cherries. That it tastes really good, so you have like a chocolate cherry type of ball. And I did write that as a option. Or there I'm just looking at cinnamon raisin, almond joy. You could put the chocolate chips with the coconut, with the chopped almonds. So the varieties are endless. Really good. Okay, how are we doing for time? We're good. So any questions coming in? Anyone want to unmute themselves and ask them questions? No, I don't see any coming in right now.
No, I don't have any more, but I'll wait till you're finished, Shauna. There's one more question here, but it's not related to what you're making, so I'll wait till you're finished.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so so as I said, if it becomes sticky, what you want to do is keep washing your hands. And when they're down, look at that. They don't stick anymore. So that's the biggest tip I can give you while you're making them. And you can enjoy these all year round. They're great. Okay, so I think, yeah, I left about 15 minutes for questions. So if you want to ask that question now while I'm just rolling them, I'm happy to answer it, even if it's
Sure.
unrelated.
I have two questions. One, can you give some info about coconut oil? We see it around a lot. Is it better than other oils?
Excellent question, and I get that question often. So when we're looking at oils, the two oils that I work at Wellspring, the Cancer Support Network, and the two oils we decided to use in our kitchen are olive oil and avocado oil. So the main oil that's really healthy for you and can be used in cooking if it's not too high of a heat, as well as raw applications, is olive oil. So that should be your number one oil you use. Then you want to use an oil that can go to a really high cooking temperature if you're going to be roasting something or frying something in a high temperature. And that I use avocado oil, or some people like canola oil. People get worried about canola oil because it's genetically modified in Canada. So if you're worried about that, buy it organic. If you buy it organic, it's non-GMO. It's just not made in Canada, the organic one, because the farmers can't produce the organic crops as well as the GMO crops. So that's canola oil. Then we get to coconut oil, which is your question. So coconut oil is high in saturated fat. And it's got something called medium chain triglycerides, which are little short fat molecules. So coconut oil, the answer to that is it's good and it's bad. It's both. So what it does is it gives you quick energy, but in terms of your cholesterol, it can raise your good cholesterol as well as your bad cholesterol. So coconut oil shouldn't be your main source of fat, and that's why I introed the oil talk, to talk about the oil discussion, to talk about what your main sources of oil should be. So to reiterate, olive oil, avocado oil, or canola oil if you choose, and all of the other oils like grapeseed oil is an oil that is high in the polyunsaturated fat. So it actually doesn't have as good of a fat profile as the olive oil. Canola oil is high in the omega-3 fats. So it's kind of like you have to balance them. Don't just stick to one oil. So I do use coconut oil, but I use it in just baking once in a while. And I buy the neutralized ones, so it doesn't have any coconut flavor. So it's okay, but it's not the best. That's my answer. I hope I answered your question. Tell me if you have any more questions about that.
Yeah, that was great. One more question about the energy bites. This
Yes.
is a good one because I was thinking it too. Can
Oh,
you
good.
roll it into a log and slice it? I've always wondered if I could sort of make them into like a granola bar.
Yes. Okay. So with the energy bites, the reason why we do it into a ball is because it's tricky. So I have recipes where I'll actually put in some almond flour and an egg and bake them off. That usually will hold them together. But if you do one like this, usually they do not stick together in a bar unless you put them in an 8x8 pan and push them down really hard and make sure you have like enough of the nut butter. But usually the circle, like rolling it, does stay together better, I find. So the only time I'll put it into a bar is if I actually decide to bake it. And some
Okay.
people also like to do mashed banana. Have you ever made one with mashed banana?
No.
Yeah, so that will give the sweetness. So there's a lot of recipes out there where they'll take mashed banana, but usually there will be an egg in that, and then you bake it, right? Because the mashed banana, you're not going to eat raw, like you usually bake it. So energy bites I find really finicky if you're not going to roll it into a ball. And I've tested so many. The other thing that I find that works if you're going to make a bar is something called coconut nectar, which is like the sap from the coconut tree. It's super duper sticky. It's stickier than honey. So I find that if I'm going to roll it into a bar and make a granola type bar, I use that. But unfortunately, you need a lot more of the sugar, like the sweetener, to make it into a bar. So good question, but they're finicky.
Gotcha. My next question is about yogurt, and I'm going to try to ask this question as clearly as I can because I know what they're getting at with the question. So a lot of patients will have low white blood cell counts or low neutrophil counts,
Yeah.
and we're often told to stay away from foods that might expose them to bacteria. And we often get a question about, I've heard this question before too, and it was a good one, yogurt. I think some have been advised yogurt's fine, and others have been told no, yogurt has a lot of those bacteria in them that you should avoid yogurt. And I know things like blue cheese you should avoid, but where does yogurt maybe fall into that?
Okay, and I do actually have the answer to that. So with yogurt, to make the yogurt, there are two bacteria cultures that they make yogurt with, and it's Lactobacillus acidophilus and another one. I think it's called BB12 or something like that. And those bacteria, once the yogurt's made, are actually die. They're not live. So when you buy a yogurt, they add live bacterial cultures into it, but they add it in a certain amount that they guarantee by the expiry date that there's going to be that amount in there. So the answer to that is those live bacteria aren't continuing to grow, and they're not like proliferating in there. So I'm not an expert in that, but I think that it's not overdoing it. So something like blue cheese or honey that isn't pasteurized, I do want to mention that if you're going to use honey, you want to get it pasteurized. That's to ward off against botulism. So the yogurt it has the healthy bacteria in it, and I personally don't think it should be a problem, but as I said, I haven't looked up if the specific strains are going to cause you distress. Now, what you do want to do is not buy a yogurt or make like from a farm or make a yogurt, because like with a sample of the bacteria, because you can never guarantee how much bacteria is in something homemade. And another example of that is something like kimchi, like Korean spicy cabbage. If you make it yourself, you can't guarantee how much fermentation is going on. So if you're worried about that, what you could do is buy a yogurt that doesn't have the active bacterial cultures, because the original yogurts that were on the market 10 to 15 years ago, the bacteria is dead. And the other thing that I can ensure is, if you bake with yogurt, so if you make like a banana muffin or like a coffee cake that has yogurt in it, you kill off the bacteria. So if you want yogurt, you want the protein in it, bake it.
Okay, that's helpful. So I guess the key there is that the bacteria in yogurt sold in the stores is not natural, it's added in.
Yes.
Okay.
So the natural stuff is dead, and then they add in, and that's why when you read yogurt labels, it's going to say live bacterial cultures added. But as I said, the companies have to make sure that it has a specific amount of bacteria in it, guaranteed to expiration date. So they're not randomly adding it, like they're not putting too much. Think about something like blue cheese or any cultured cheeses. That's mold growing. It's not the same as yogurt. It's not the same as the bacteria.
Okay, thank you. I think that that answers that well.
Yeah,
Thank you.
confusing. Yeah,
Yes.
it's confusing, but the bottom line is, don't make it yourself.
Right.
That's the bottom. Yeah, or buy it from a farm. It's like buying apple cider. Cider, like apple cider from a farm, and you don't know how much bacteria is in there because it's not regulated.
Right.
And especially in this population, you want to make sure that you're eating regulated foods.
Okay, thank you. Any last questions? I'll just leave it open for a second in case there's any more. I'm happy to open the lines as well if folks want to ask their questions live. They're probably happier for me just to do it.
Yeah, it's comfortable.
Yeah. I don't see any. Anything else you wanted to add, Shauna, before we wrap up?
Yeah, so there is one thing I just want to remember. We talked about, choosing the whole foods and minimizing the processed foods and try to avoid the ultra processed foods. That's a new classification that is a worldwide classification. It's actually called NOVA, if you want to look it up, if you like looking things like that up. It's NOVA. And this is a way that we teach that we want to choose as many whole foods as we can. And that includes things like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, lentils, that type of thing. Those are whole. And then once we start processing foods down, we're getting rid of lots of the nutrition, and we're also incorporating ways to enter bacteria, that type of thing. And then we get to the ultra processed foods, and they're really processed down, and there's not a lot of nutrition in them. So I'd really like to emphasize that we should be choosing the whole foods more often, especially if our immune system's compromised. And choosing things like the fresh ginger root or turmeric root, which is similar to ginger. It's a rhizome, it's in the same family. Also, garlic is really healthy. It has an active component called allicin, which is super healthy for us. So sometimes we think, you know, I'm not feeling so well, I'm really tired, I'm not eating so healthy, but things like ginger and garlic and turmeric and cooking, especially if you like the Indian type of meals, are really healthy, and we don't think of that, right? So if you want to choose those types of roots. And actually, one more thing I want to mention now that I'm thinking, if you get me talking, I'll talk forever about nutrition. I know we're time sensitive here, but herbs and spices, so things like parsley, thyme, basil, fresh herbs are also have a lot of nutrients. You shouldn't use those as just garnishes. You should throw them into things like pesto, or throw them into a sauce, that type of thing. So try to maximize your herbs and spices, and especially if you're not feeling so well, the ones that can make you feel better are things like the ginger, as we talked about.
Great. I don't see any more questions. So thank you so much, Shauna. This was so interesting. It was nice to see you cook, and I really wish I was there to eat those energy bites.
I know.
I think
I
I
feel
might
so
have to
bad.
cook
I'm like,
some up.
yeah. I
We'll just
wish I
make
could
some
feed you through
ourselves.
the screen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Well,
okay.
and they're easy. You saw how long it takes. These are quick and easy, and make them your own. Put what what you like in them, and maximize your energy.
Yeah, I make them all the time, and you're right, they really are quick to make, and you can kind of throw them together with whatever you have lying around, and I just kind of make them up, and you try them, and they're great, and they really are great to bring on the road or to work or out for the day, and they last, so they're great.
Yeah, they're portable and they freeze well. It's just the
Hmm.
perfect recipe for a snack. Yeah,
I think
or a
so.
breakfast. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So as a reminder, this recording will be on our website, so you can view it later. You can look back as to how Shauna made the recipe if you don't remember something. We will also ensure that the recipes, if you didn't receive them, you should have before the session, but if you didn't, they will be attached with the recording, and you can find that on our website. And Shauna, I know that you have a website. You can find Shauna on social media. And so what is your website, Shauna?
So my website is my full name, shaunalindzon.com. So it's SHAUNALINDZON.com. And I also have an Instagram handle, which I love putting recipes up, and that's Shauna Lynn. So SHAUNALIN. Just look that up and you'll see Shauna Lynn RD. And then I have a Facebook page, which is Shauna Lindzon Registered Dietitian. I know it's boring, but people find me. So Shauna Lindzon Registered Dietitian. And I do LinkedIn. I don't really do Twitter, but Instagram's my favorite. So if you want to connect via Instagram.
Great. And yeah, I know that you have lots of recipes on your website, and I've seen them on Instagram as well. So if you want more great recipes, check out Shauna's information.
Absolutely.
Thanks
Yeah.
so
Thank
much,
you.
Shauna. Thank you everyone for coming, and hope everybody has a great weekend.
Bye, everyone.